Hi everyone, this is going to be the start of a new series actually.
This is a branch off of our video on story elements, what makes a book enjoyable to us. So we're going to take those tiers we had in there and break those down a little bit more. This is our video on characters, so what makes a character enjoyable to us.
So in our top tier we have characters, and in that characters we have like these three subcategories, I guess.
Tiers.
So the first of these is their personality needs to have substance that makes them relatable or understandable.
This doesn't necessarily mean that these characters have to be a good person and make good choices all the time. We just need to know their motives, a little bit about their motives behind making those choices so that we can understand them. And if they're consistently making poor choices, they especially need a reason for why, a reason that's right in their mind, even if maybe we can see the flaws. Preferably, we can't see the flaws and we see, okay, this is a bad choice, but I don't know what else she would do or he would do.
Yeah, if a character is constantly making poor choices that are just, they don't seem to fit with their personality, fit in the way, they're unreasonable, we won't like that. That type of character is just frustrating to us and we just end up not liking it. So if a character is angry at someone or something like that, their choices in relation to that character, that other character will reflect their anger with them. They'll probably lash out at them or something like that, and it'll reflect in their decisions the anger and that they're harboring against that character.
A character's actions reflect their motives and the things that they live by, their moral standards.
So when I think of a good character that is understandable as to why they make the choices that they make, I think of Kaladin Stormblessed from the Stormlight Archives. This is a fairly recent book that I've read, but I really, in many ways, connected with this character, partially because he's got similar features to my own, but that's less so to the reasons why he made the decisions that he did. I personally haven't had to deal with them, but I see them and I understand them, and it makes me relate to him that much more. He makes his decisions out of hope. He's a very hopeful character throughout the entire book. The thing is, he gets all this hope and then it's shattered. And then, so he makes decisions based on that shattered hope because he has no hope at that point. And then slowly it builds up and he gets the hope back and he starts making decisions out of hope. And then they're shattered again. And this cycle keeps repeating itself, and it's really interesting to see, especially when you combine that with the wrongs that have been done to him by people in the past. And so that fury at the Light Eyes, or the elite of that world, mixed with his constant hope and shattered hope cycle, makes for a really interesting dichotomy that really causes his character to be very interesting and relatable.
I'm talking about Anastasia. I think she's called Nadia or Nastia in Romanov by Nadine Brandes. I can't remember what variation of Anastasia she used. So this character is 17, the same age as I was when I read the book. That's not true, I'm pretty sure I was 18.
Doesn't matter.
Beside the point, back to the topic. Anastasia is very real to me. She's not necessarily relatable, but she is very real. The one aspect of her that is very relatable is her family. Because she's trapped in a house with her family and, some guards, but mostly her family, they're a huge part of her life, and that's also how they were brought up. Family is very important, and that's something that I can relate to personally. A lot of Anastasia's decisions are made because of things that her dad taught her, things that, specific phrases even, that will come to her mind as she's trying to make choices, or her moral upbringing. So that was the Bible for her. She called it something different, and I think it was either a Russian phrase or just the specific name that Nadine Brandes chose to use for the Bible. And so she takes a lot of her moral standards from there as well. Her childishness, or her youth rather, and her wit also play a lot into her decisions. She's only 17 in this book, so her choices are, reflect that of a 17-year-old's mind. Her decisions aren't always mature as a fully developed adult would be, but they are respectable for her age. I think very respectable. She is a very witty girl, and that we see that a lot as well. One thing that makes her a little more relatable and also very real, because this is something that we notice all the time, she notes the small things. something that's written from her perspective, almost in a diary type of format. And she notices things like, oh, my clothes are wearing out and we can't get new clothes. Or something about the food, stuff that is actually very noticeable that we would notice, like, oh, my toe hurt today a lot, it just really ached. Those are things she's bringing out, obviously not the aching toe, but things like that, and that makes it real because she's in a very serious situation, and the big picture is what we normally read about in these type of books. But we got the big picture and we got all the little details, and this just made it all more real and all more tragic and effective in the ending, which isn't really a spoiler because this is a historical fiction that happened 200 years ago. So if you guys don't know it, I'm sorry, you're just a little outdated. Whether or not we agree or like the decisions that a character makes comes down to our personal opinion, but if we can understand where they're coming from and understand why they made the choices, we're going to respect them a lot more.
We really just want to see why the character makes the decisions that they do. It really ties into their background, the history that they have, which actually nicely segues into our next point, which is they need a backstory that cause them to develop into the person they are when we meet them. A backstory doesn't necessarily need to be shown in the story itself, but it needs to be known by the author so that they can, when they're writing a character, they can think, okay, this character did this, so that thing in their past would cause them to make a decision like this.
Right. They've learned from previous mistakes, or they've learned from watching other mistakes. Or there's three main things I noticed that people around us and we in our own lives experience: trials, events, and influences. We have a lot of people influence us personally, and who we're around, especially at a young age, really influences how we will turn out to be.
So obviously each character is at a different point in the story. So, for example, Harry Potter, when we first meet him, is an 11-year-old boy. He hasn't lived that much life and experienced that many things, versus, say, Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings, where he has lived thousands of years and has seen a ton of things, and all those decisions have influenced him into the character he has become today.
But if you think about it in the perspective of the fact that a natural human life is not 1,000 years long, Harry Potter has lived a decent portion of his life in the most developmental portion. They say that middle school is where you're influenced the most. But the thing is, he didn't have much in his middle school years. Nothing exciting happened. We see what happened, and we see how it affected him. Although some people say that he should have been a lot more mentally tortured by it, I think
that's a debate for another time. Another really good example of someone in the middle of that spectrum between not having been developed and having been developed for many, many years is Vin from Mistborn. We both read this series and we both absolutely love Vin's character because it's very relatable. She's a teenager. I think she's 17, when we first meet her. But she's been living her life on the streets as a thief and as a street urchin since she was 6, I think. I'm not positive on that, so don't quote me on that, but I think she was 6 or something like that. So it's been a long time for her, and she's developed to where she is this hardened and guarded.
And stealthy.
There's a specific word I'm looking for. And just a very cautious character, unwilling to trust anybody that she meets. And this is due to her background with basically slavery. Not really slavery, but she's been
in servitude.
She's
in a kind of way.
Been hurt and abandoned, mentally damaged and things over the years that she's lived, and she's had to deal with that. So when she meets Kelsier and his crew, she has to learn to trust them, but she doesn't want to because she knows that they're going to break her trust. And so it's an interesting in the middle point between Harry and Gandalf, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Something else that's interesting about Vin is she was relatable, and in a weird way, I related to her in book 1, but in book 2 I didn't, and I'm interested to figure out why, because I don't know why book 2 and the majority until the end of book 3 I didn't relate to her at all. Comment down below if you want us to explore that some more.
This last subcategory is that the character needs some sort of character growth and development throughout the story. this is pretty simple. They need a character arc.
Something I like to remember that helps me develop a character arc for each character as I'm writing a story myself is remembering, if I think of it in real life, you know, right now, Tony and I are on the same, we have two different paths of our life, and right now they're intersecting, or they're going side by side, because we're around each other all the time. But if I think about it like that, the characters that my main character is meeting are intersecting with her path right now, but they all have paths of their own, and that's how they're developing through those paths. They're, you know, maybe they're just starting out their path. Maybe someone is already a good ways away. And so we need to see at least some sort of character development, or even just the result of character development. Like you talked about with Gandalf, he's pretty well developed by the time we see him, but yet there's still more to see, even if it's just the ending of that.
Well, what's interesting is Tolkien, in all of his writings, there's not one poorly developed character, and every single character has a character arc, even if it's so small that you won't notice it unless you're searching for it. But Gandalf has a pretty substantial character arc, and that's, I mean, he's one of the oldest characters in Middle-earth, and the fact that he's still able to have a character arc is really interesting. As with Gandalf, there's quite a few other characters who are fully fleshed out when we first meet them, and so they don't really need a character arc in that way, but it's still good to give them one if possible.
There's a lot of great character arcs in books that we've read, but we're going to talk about Katniss Everdeen because we just did a review on The Hunger Games, and we already discussed this a little bit, so maybe this will be a review, so we'll keep it short for you.
When we first meet Katniss, we learn almost instantly that she's a hunter and that she's a survivor and that she wants to take care of her family. But we also get this sense of a little bit of anger and resentment towards the Capitol because of the way that they've treated the Capitol has treated District 12 for her entire life and long before that.
She's also bitter against her mom for retreating so much when her dad died and leaving Katniss responsible.
Yeah. She really only trusts herself, and I mean, you could say she trusts Gale, but even that's kind of debatable in some ways. But she really only trusts herself to take care of her family, and so when she volunteers in the place of Prim as tribute, she can't take care of her family anymore, so she's then has to trust on and rely on other people to take care of her family because she just physically cannot.
At
She's
that
not
time,
there.
yeah. But that's her goal throughout the whole book, is to win so that she can go home and take care of her family.
She really just wants to do whatever she can to ensure that that her family stays safe. And this, she doesn't care. She'll be a pawn to the Capitol if she has to, because that's what's going to keep her family safe. But as the story progresses, all these personality traits, I guess, they start to change a little bit. She starts to trust other characters. She trusts Rue and she trusts Peeta, and she even learns to trust Haymitch because Haymitch is awesome. But
he's watching out for her, and she realizes that in his odd way.
She also learns that, and kind of comes to this realization that she, even though at the beginning she didn't care if whatever happened with the Capitol, she didn't care. But as she comes to realize through this book, she doesn't want to be a pawn to the Capitol, and this is in large part due to Peeta. We talked quite a bit about this in our review, but she learns that she doesn't want to be a pawn to the Capitol, and so she finds a way to fight without seeming like she's fighting. But what's interesting about this is that it's not all at once. Oh, I agree with what Peeta said. I don't want the Capitol to change me from who I am. She starts to realize that, and it takes the entire book for her to realize this. She doesn't care how or if she dies, as long as she doesn't die because the Capitol told her to. She wants to, if she's gonna die, she's gonna die her way. And the fact that it took her the entire book really to come to this realization is what gives her such a strong character arc.
I don't know that it's necessarily submitting to the Capitol for her. It's more about saving Peeta's life. She realizes there's one more person I have to protect.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it. I don't know that she's completely at the revolting against the Capitol point.
We just really like characters to have real and relatable personality traits, either thoughts or actions or maybe some little phrase that they say.
because books are set in different worlds and different settings and time periods. Not like phrases, for example, is very subjective. In one of my books, I have a character who says "sup peeps," that's one of her phrases, and it characterizes her at first, but the more you get to know her, it still fits her, but in a really weird way, it contrasts her personality. And I love that one little phrase can capture all that of her. And it's a quirk, it's something. And there's other things that, maybe they're relatable. Maybe, why are you repeating the same thing I said? Something like that, It's usually humor, and a lot of times it's humor, and it makes us connect with them.
Yeah. If you enjoyed the video, please like and comment down below, and follow us on Instagram if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay warm.